Hello and welcome to the Reiki Women Podcasts. And here we are again. There is the lovely Carrie Varela with the luscious black, what would you call that? Cleopatra?
Tresses.
Or who was the woman with all the snakes? Medusa-like hair. Ooh, yes. And then we have the gorgeous Michaela Daystar in the very postmodern, model look, and myself, Bronwen Logan. Yes, I'm growing my locks and enjoying it. So it's very nice to see you again. And today we are going to be talking about a subject that all three of us actually have experienced and will continue to experience until the day we die. Oh no, it's a joy most of the time. And it's called motherhood. Yes. So today we're going to have a chat about motherhood and how it works with the system of Reiki. So, have we benefited? Have we not benefited? And where the difficulties may lie, or where we might have some tips, hints, things like that for prospective parents. I just had a woman in my class this weekend who was pregnant, and I think she was probably a little nervous about that, and her first child, thinking, how is this all going to pan out, and how can the system of Reiki help me? So, as a pregnant person, maybe we should start at that point. Anyone here got any thoughts on that? I see raised eyebrows.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were sharing about your student, that there's part of me that really wishes that I had been a Reiki practitioner and had this system in my life when I was pregnant, because I began practicing Reiki when my youngest daughter was about 3. And I have 2 kids who are currently 12 and 24. And so my older daughter was, in her teenage years and was going through some challenging times. My younger daughter was very young. And so Reiki in that context was really about stabilizing my own self inside of the pressures of parenting, and then ultimately single parenting. But I have this longing to have been pregnant with Reiki, because I've taught classes for pregnant folks, or folks who are planning to have children go through pregnancy, and with them and in collaboration with their experience, have really learned a lot about what it means to grow a child inside of the container of the practice of the system of Reiki. And I'll say more about that as we go along, but it feels like something that can have a lot of changes, can impact our communities, our families in a lot of ways when we raise children from the beginning inside of this kind of container. So that's what came up for me immediately.
Yeah, so I had the privilege of having Reiki in my life for many years prior to becoming a mom. My kiddos, I've been a Reiki practitioner for 15 years now, and then I became pregnant with my first kiddo about 5 years ago. He's almost 5 now. And then my second one came along very swiftly afterwards. And so I've been loving being a mom and navigating all that means as a small business owner, as a Reiki practitioner, as a yoga teacher. It's good to frame it through your lens, Michaela, because I feel like Reiki is such an integral part of my day-to-day life that I often take it for granted. And just was thinking back on my own pregnancies, especially, with both of them, but just the joy of having this aliveness inside me and holding another soul's life and carrying them through that journey to, their own body embodiment. And that was just the most profound experience. And I recommend it for anyone. And you don't have to have a child to really just totally get blown like mind blown around how profound it is, that we are these souls, and the formation of our bodies, like, and it's all so intricate, um, but so, written in our DNA, this evolution and this progress, this growth. And I know for myself, like when I was pregnant, connecting to Reiki to the baby was really helpful for me. It helped with a lot of those pregnancy fears. And especially around, like fear of loss or concern about the baby. I could almost always just drop into this few breaths, a few moments connecting to energy. And I really felt this resonance and connection to the baby. And I love that feeling. And it was really soothing for me as a mom. Also, I think it was really soothing for my kiddos, and I can recall times where they felt agitated. They were moving around a lot, and I just was able to sit in those feelings and sensations, send them Reiki. And there was a definite feeling like there was a calmer or more relaxed way of being. So that was really incredible. And I have to say that my kids are my greatest teachers. I mean, I think a lot of people say that. It's kind of a cheesy thing to say, but it's so true. And especially looking at it through the lens of Reiki, knowing what I know now about the Hara, that, the Hara is this original energy, and that we all come from this, place, from this deep, womb in maybe the earth, maybe in the cosmos, but to be reborn from that place, to be born from that place is about connecting to our original energy. And so my kids are really an embodiment of that in so many ways, especially when they were they're growing up now. So they're taking up a lot of other things from their little world. But when they were just little babies, like, they just had this glow. And especially my daughter, even now my daughter, when I am just hold her, hug her, anything, there's this sweetness in that energy that is, like, to me, I don't know, there's nothing more pure than that. And so when she was just like a little 6-month-old baby, like, I just get lost in how she radiated, herself and who she is. And even now, what my kids have been teaching me a lot lately is about emotional resilience. And they're 3 and 4 now. And so they, like, they'll have these like immense fits where they're just so angry and so upset about something. And like, might be the simplest thing that, I don't know, their brother shoved them, or something happened, or they can't have their favorite toy, or whatever it is. And they'll just take themselves through this whole cycle of really intense emotion. And then on the other side of it, they're like, I'm happy again. And I just love that, because I feel like we just don't do that in our day-to-day life. I mean, as adults, our emotions are a little bit, more complex perhaps. But we so often don't allow ourselves that freedom to just feel what we feel, to get angry, to be upset, to express that, to emote it, and then to resolve it and come back into our original energy. And so that's what my kids teach me every day. One of the things that motherhood teaches me, and seeing it through the lens of Reiki, I think, is even more profound.
Right. Yeah, well, there's a lot in there. There's something that really stood out for me in something that you just said then, which is that about the Hara. And, a while ago I had like that aha moment where it was like the Hara talking about the idea that, this is the energy that we're born with, and it's passed down to us. But it's also when you have a baby, the womb, when a baby sits deep in the womb, that sensation is in that same space, and it's this deep, it's like a deep heaviness of it's and it was sort of like, I know when I was pregnant, that it was sort of like I'd never known that space before. And it was like, wow, there's this part of my body that I don't really know. It's an internal part of me. And I still think very fondly of that real deep heaviness of having that baby in the womb and the connection of that with the hara, and how we are born from this space. We as when we're in utero, we live in this space. And I think that's really profound, you know, for who we are as human beings, and what we take out into the world, and how we do that, and how we're sort of immersed in our mother's hara when we're in, you know, when we're inside our mums. And yeah, I just think that's incredibly special and touching.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's one of the places that I invite people to focus when I'm teaching specifically to folks who are expecting, whether they're biologically pregnant or whether they're preparing to welcome a child into their family through some other means, is that, you know, doing a variation of Joshin Kokyoho, where they're settling their attention into their hara, they're connecting with that spark of life at the center. That spark of life is radiating outward, and then connecting with the spark of light that's the baby's spark that's radiating outward. Now, if they're pregnant, then that radiating is happening kind of, you know, inside of the same physical space.
Yeah.
If they're not pregnant, or if it's their partner that's working with them, or they're working with a child who's not their biological child, you know, it really can be so profound to feel that sense of embodied connection, whether or not we grew that child inside of our own body. But to remember that their true self, their spark of light, is so at the surface at that point when they're so young. You know, it hasn't been covered over yet. It hasn't been dimmed yet. And that connection to that bright light that hasn't been dimmed yet can be really powerful, not only for connecting with our child, but also for remembering our own brightness. Like, it has a cleansing aspect for the adult who's focusing on that, as well as a connecting aspect with, you know, between the adults and the child. And so it's a really powerful but simple variation on Joshin Kokyoho that I really love working with people wherever they're at on their journey of parenthood, for that reason, that it's like, you know, this really beautiful you know, coincidence that the womb is in the physical location of the energy center of the hara.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful. I didn't mention before that, so I've been doing practicing the system of Reiki about a year or so prior to probably being pregnant. So yeah, I was fortunate to have that opportunity. And it was almost like when I think I was still in the throes of such excitement about practicing the system of Reiki that you know, it was you know, like, what do you call it, like the honeymoon phase of practicing, in that I was really, you know, just sort of like working so hard at it, and really just everything it had to do with that. So being pregnant, it was just like, oh wow, you know, this opportunity to work with it in a different way again, you know, and so excited to be able to know that I'm making this connection with a child inside me that's not born yet. And not just me, also my partner. I think that's really nice for couples, you know, because possibly the partner doesn't necessarily feel as involved as the mother. I mean, here you are every waking moment with this living being inside of you, you know, I mean, that is just phenomenal. So, you know, for them to be able to have this sense of connection that they may not have imagined that they could have, I think is really spectacular as well. But yeah, very exciting. Just you know, I felt like it gave me layers more excitement, and it was already exciting, you know. So yeah, just such a beautiful thing to be able to know that you are really feeling the energy, and I wouldn't say necessarily feeling like a separate energy or anything like that. It's just sort of like a boundless you energy, because it's just magnified and so exciting. And I think that is actually relates to this idea that we are all totally interconnected, and not to forget that our energies is ultimately at that deeper level. It's all the same. But when we're pregnant, it just reminds us, which is sort of what you were saying, Michaela, I think, it just reminds us of just how great and that actually is. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I know.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know. I mean, I really can relate to that feeling, because I think there were moments, especially right after my son was born, where, I mean, I really struggled with fear as a mom, and I still do. And it's just a worry about my kids. Like, I want them to be okay. I do struggle with the fear of loss, just thinking about what would happen if I lost them. And that's something that's like dagger to my heart. And if I let myself go down that road, it's usually not a good thing. So I'm grateful for the little bumpers of Reiki that tell me just don't indulge in that worry. Although I really struggled with it as a mom, but I remember just the feeling of, when my kiddo was in a bassinet next to me, sleeping at night, and just holding him and soothing him and putting myself in his position, and how vulnerable it is to be born into this existence. And we come from who knows where, the spiritual realm. We come into a body, and we're and it's unfortunate that so many children, really struggle, or those wounds that can happen in the beginning of our life can be really deep. But I was so grateful that I could offer a safe place for my child to come into existence and come into the world, and to give him as much love as I possibly could. And I know just holding him and just placing my hand on his belly and being able to soothe him must have done something really profound to his nervous system. I would assume. I would hope so. But in that, I just felt like what it is to just like reach out to the infinite and like grab a hold of the soul and like bring them into this world, and just how much work it is. I mean, it's a lot of work to be a mom and to be a parent in general. It's so much work. We come out with so many needs. And so I think that the experience of motherhood, and, with that lens of Reiki, also has given me this bigger perspective about how important we are, and how each of us matter so much. And almost like the kind of it sounds a little crazy, but just like maybe a little bit like the weight of each of us. Like we create space, we make space, we need so much as human beings. And once we get, our wheels moving through life, we don't notice that as much. But we need each other. That interconnection is so profound. And I think in our culture and society, it's easy to forget. But these times in our life, like particularly the beginning of life and at the end of life, at times it becomes so clear how much we do need from each other. And especially when we can't do that for ourselves. I have a lot of heart and pain for other people who came into the world who, didn't have that support or connection. And I think Reiki can hold us that in that time too, and help others who've been through that experience and still feel a sense of trust and safety and belonging in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I came, as I said, to Reiki when I was already quite a ways into my parenting identity and experience. And, I came to Reiki as part of a much larger process of recovering and healing from, a really difficult period of time. I had just separated from my husband and was single parenting. And, Reiki was really part of my personal recovery. And one of the ways that really mattered was in holding space for my two kids as they went through their own really difficult time with all of it, while still staying true to myself. Because, part of what I was navigating was having spent a lot of my adult life, really giving over of myself, giving over of my energy and my time disproportionately to my family, to other people. Many people have this experience. Many of the people that I now work with have this experience of just over giving of ourselves, out of our own hurts and fears. And that imbalance over time really is a huge detriment to our health and well-being and our ability to be connected and to be well. And, I was finding it was just extremely difficult to hold good space for my kids, which included holding boundaries for my kids, creating boundaries that weren't there before because I didn't have good boundary setting. Learning how to do that, learning how to keep myself grounded and well, how to tend to myself well, how to model that for my kids as they were making their decisions. And so it was, really part of that whole landscape of how to create a balanced space in our lives, and how to hold my own needs and my own wellness alongside of theirs in appropriate balance. And, part of that meant backing off from them in certain ways, not trying to control them as tightly as I had been. And rather than trying to tell them what to do to, make better decisions about their lives, I'm thinking particularly of the older one, the 3-year-old, you still had to tell her what to do. She's 3. But, but with my older daughter, I spent so much time like trying to rigidly control her choices out of fear. And as I began to work with Reiki, letting go of that attachment to that fear, letting go of that attachment to controlling her choices, and instead trying to model good decision making, be open and honest with her about my own process and my own decisions that I was making, my own process for coming to what felt like healthier decisions for myself. So it was in that container that Reiki and parenting kind of came together for me, and unlearning a lot of bad habits, a lot of unhealthy parenting behaviors, a lot of unhealthy self-care behaviors. And, really for the first time in my life, coming into a more balanced place with that. And, I know that my kids paid attention to that and noticed, how that changed the way our household felt and how they felt, being parented in ways that I don't fully know and may never know, or may know as they get older and more able to, articulate these things. But, I just have so much gratitude for, the right timing of this practice coming into my life at this time when I desperately needed to learn how to let go of attachment to fear, to anger, to control, and to really ease into a greater space of connection with my kids and with my own life, my own community, in a really beautiful way.
Mm. Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, it made me think of the, like that interconnect. Like, it's interesting because you've got those kids of different ages, Michaela, and so as you're saying, different things, you're needing different things at different times, aren't you?
Yeah.
And and Carrie, you've still got the young ones, and I've got an older one. Well, mine's 22, so similar to your eldest, Michaela. But just thinking about when a child is young and how that's different, because when a child is young, I always remember I went to a kinesiologist, and it was something about the baby. I can't remember what it was. It's a long time ago, but the kinesiologist was a friend of mine, and she said, oh no, I'm not going to treat the baby, I'm going to treat you. And I was like, huh? And she said, yeah, because that baby was inside of you for 9 months or whatever, and then everything you do, it's you are just so totally, as a mother, you are so connected to that child when they're so young, in that almost physical way, yeah, and not just energetically connected, but we have these other connections. And so any physical thing that the baby might have, if I work on you, that will just be reflected in the child. And I thought that was such a great wisdom, and it's something that I've always held close, as especially when a child is young, that I think maybe the first 7 years or something like that we have this connection, that whatever is going on with the child is going on with the mother, and whatever's going on with the mother is going on with the child. And slowly, as the child gets older, I can feel that these things start to separate. We start to separate, not energetically, but in so many other ways. I mean, children obviously learn to become independent, and they make their own choices without our advice, or and that's great. That's what life is about. But there'll always be this wonderful, I don't know what that is, but I have it. I lost my mum recently, and it was just there is that thing, that beautiful connection that we have, if we I don't know, some people can have not great relationships with their parents, but I think even though that may be the case, there is still always this thread underneath that remains.
There's a piece that's really standing out to me in what you just shared, and that's around that transition time, when that closeness, that physical closeness, that emotional closeness, that is characteristic of a reasonably healthy relationship between parents and young children, and those children start to differentiate. They start to grow up and become more independent and need to make their own decisions, and they start to pull away from us. They start to need their privacy. They start to not want us around them as much. And my younger daughter is 12, and she's just really about a year into that, and really in the last few months. And I was just today we went out to get some lunch, and I was feeling that, I don't want to walk next to you. I'm going to walk a little bit ahead of you. I don't want you to put your arm around me. I want, like, oh, don't look at me like that, mom, like that. Oh, you're embarrassing me, kind of stage. And, I just had this like heart aching moment, right? This like, oh, she doesn't want me to, she's embarrassed by me, and, it's this whole new layer of support that I'm finding that I need as a parent, because on the one hand, like, this is good and right. Like, it is the developmental stage that she's in. She needs to differentiate herself. She needs to learn how to make her own decisions and learn from her mistakes and all of those things, so that she can be a functioning adult, right? Like, we know that this is an appropriate stage, and that there's, we still need to hold a structure. We need to hold a container and boundaries. We need to give them guidance appropriately. But I think there's a big part of, what makes it so difficult to set those boundaries and give appropriate structure when we're feeling that heartbreak, when we're feeling like that, like I'm offended almost, like, how could you be treating me this way, right? Like, there's a little bit of that feeling coming up around the normal pieces, right? The normal developmental changes. And so, it's this new layer of Reiki being a support, of saying, okay, it's because it's destabilizing, is what I was realizing today. It feels destabilizing to have that relationship change in that way. And so, okay, I remember, I know how to get myself back into a space of feeling stable, feeling grounded, feeling rooted, feeling resourced, feeling connected, right? Because there's that feeling of disconnection that starts to happen when they pull away from us. And so remembering, ultimately we're always connected. Ultimately, we will always be connected. Like in the way that matters the most, we are absolutely connected. And if I can stay focused on that, and I can stay grounded, and I can stay in a space of compassion for myself and the heartbreak, and my sense of compassion for her and the stage that she's in, then, we'll come through this in a way that's healthy and strong, right? Because we can really break relationship during that period of time, right? We can cause hurts for each other that take a while to repair when we don't stay rooted in what matters, which is that we're always connected. We always love each other. We're compassionate for each other, and we need to give each other space. Holding space for each other looks different in this phase. And even knowing all of that, like, it's still like, I still have these little heartbreaky, moments of like, God, why is she talking to me like that? So yeah, just another place where Reiki is a powerful ally, a powerful source of support.
Carrie, you've still got young kids, so you haven't had the grief and heartbreak that they cause us when they're teenagers, when they become teenagers and that sort of thing. And, of course, there are joys in teenagers, but yeah, it's that needing, we do need to make some separation. And just before, when you were talking about the lovely cuddles, I can remember those cuddles. Oh my goodness, so touching and beautiful, and feels like it will never end, actually, right? Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's this like, there's this impermanence that it teaches us. So I always have to feel like I'm really like have my heart open to the beauty of this experience. And I just try to fill my heart up enough that it'll last my whole lifetime, because I know I am going to really miss it when I'm gone, or when they're a little bit older. But in my stage of parenting, I need Reiki too, man. It's just a lot. I have 2 toddlers. They're crazy. I mean, and they're at this stage where they're just like in each other's face all the time. And like, there's a lot of screaming and a lot of crying and a lot of drama and a lot of hyperactivity, where it's just like one toy satisfies for 5 seconds and the other for 2 minutes, but then everything else in between is just, there's so much demands on me. So I feel like Reiki has put me like really in the flow of class 3 rapid being a mom at certain times. Of course, there are some somewhat chill moments, but not that many in my household. So I really need that grounding that I can get, this kind of soothe my nervous system and, step into a more rational adult place. Can be challenging at times. So I don't know. I mean, I just think, Reiki's this amazing tool. So I'm very grateful for it. I also have to say that one of the challenges I experienced as a mom, and I don't think enough people talk about it, and especially I don't think enough women talk about it, is just the challenges around economics once you become a mom, and that very intense 5-year period until a kid goes into public school, and you have to pay for daycare, and if you want to work, and dealing with the economic piece. And I know for myself, teaching yoga, becoming a mom basically made it financially infeasible to teach yoga, considering like the amount of time it takes to teach a yoga class, how much I earn, how much I have to pay somebody else to watch my child. So really common for me through the last 5 years or so, is to pay somebody else a living wage so I could go work for like $5. And that was a really frustrating piece. It still frustrates me, but one of the really wonderful things about being a Reiki practitioner is I can set my own rates, and I can, evaluate what I really need in order to spend that time away from my child and my kids. And yes, still most of that money money goes to a lot of other places except for me. But it does allow me to continue the work that I do, which is super meaningful. And it fuels me also to be, a more centered and more present mother. Um, so I think more parents need to talk about that stage of life. I think more women, we need to be a little bit more vocal about how challenging that stage of life is. I mean, I think they say estimate as many as 40 to 60 women lose their livelihood when they become mothers in that first 5 years of motherhood. It's a very unsupported time in life. And I want more women to be talking about it. So I'm always happy to share my story.
I know Michaela's going to have something to say about this, but I just wanted to quickly say one thing that we spoke about just before we started was identity. And, being a working person is a part of our identity. And when we lose that, it's very difficult. To get back into the workforce and become someone who feels valued for what they can do, very difficult. So I'll just put that in there. And the other thing that I read a statistic recently, and they were saying about poverty levels. And Michaela, you'll know about this because they said that single mums actually are the highest percentage of people in our poverty level in society. So, yeah, a difficult place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really important aspect of the conversation for a lot of reasons. And some of the things that came up for me is, firstly, the piece that you mentioned, Carrie, about flexibility and like scheduling around our life that becomes possible if we choose to work in this way, that there's an economic risk taking because it's no longer a salaried position, right? The amount of income that we earn is directly proportionate to how many people, we are able to connect with. For me, I had been working a full-time job and for quite a number of years had about an hour and a half commute away from my home. So for my younger daughter's first, 5, 6, 7 years of life, trying to remember now exactly when, I think she was 7 when we transitioned. I would drop her off at daycare before school and pick her up from daycare way after school, after she was often having dinner, at the daycare. I feel incredibly blessed to have had a childcare provider who became like family and, had a lot of flexibility, was willing to trade Reiki sessions for some of those extra hours. But the amount of time that I was able to spend with my kids was like practically nothing. It was like bedtime. Versus now where I work from home, right? I'm here all of the time and that has its own challenges. But I have so much gratitude for being able to have chosen a profession that gives me that kind of flexibility and that has opened my mind to a more creative and flexible way of getting our needs met. Widening out the village and widening out, how resources come into my family beyond simply the paycheck that comes in from my job. So I've, because I'm working from home, because I'm more rooted in my community, I've set up all kinds of systems for being in connection and reciprocity and sharing resources inside of my community, and truly giving back, but also receiving quite a bit. And that's how I'm staying out of poverty, honestly, is like through connectivity, right? Through connection, through interconnection on the energetic level, rooting into my home, rooting into this space physically and energetically, and then also logistically through, making my business something that has a presence here, something that gives back to the community and therefore, this reciprocation that's built up. So there's challenges and benefits on both sides. It's definitely a lot of times feels more risky, right? Because I don't still have that, I don't have that paycheck that I can count on coming in the same way, the same time every month. But my quality of life is so much better. When I think back, it's like, it's hard to even imagine putting myself back into the position of commuting an hour and a half away from my family, my kids, my home. But I did that for 7 years. Yeah, so a lot of elements when we think about our experiences as parents, our experiences as Reiki practitioners, and the intersections of that. And I'd love to extend an invitation to those of you listening, those of you watching, whether you're a Reiki practitioner, whether you have experienced Reiki in your life, I'd really invite you to think about your relationship to parenting. You might be a parent yourself. You might have people in your life who are parents. Certainly you do. You have your own parents. We all have some relationship to parenting. And for most of us, there's some aspect of that relationship to parenting that is challenging, that's vexing us in some way. So places where we might be holding shame or judgment or frustration or anger or fear. And so I just invite you to think about where those places might be inside of your relationship to parenting, and either reflecting on your own or sharing with us so we can have a conversation about how the system of Reiki might support you in those places. We would love to share our perspective on that, on how the system of Reiki can support you across a wide range of aspects of your relationship to parenting, as well as your relationship to life. And if you are a person who is in the process of considering welcoming a child into your home, or you're on a pregnancy journey or an adoption journey right now, I'd love to have you join me for that class on resilient childbirth with Reiki that I mentioned, which next one happens to be coming up September 24th. So just thought I'd slip in a little mention of that if anybody out there is interested.
There's also one other thing that also a difficult aspect that we haven't spoken about, but it is still in relationship to motherhood. And for me, I had a miscarriage after I had my first child. And some people may never get to actually have a child, and they only have miscarriages, and yet in that place, you are still seeing yourself as a parent, a mum. And I think that's a difficult space to be in, because the child doesn't eventuate as this physical being at the end of the story. So I think that's another thing. And as far as people who experience that, I think the system of Reiki is also something. When we first started the chat today, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but someone said that it starts with us, as a mum, so it's about us being whole and happy and balanced, centered, grounded. And so if we can find those places within ourselves, resilience, if we find those places, that's definitely going to support us through no matter what we go through, and especially difficult times, such as miscarriages or losing a child. I mean, one of the worst things that you could possibly think of, so that that could happen. So something like the system of Reiki, I do think, can definitely be of benefit in those situations for people. And I definitely found it for myself to be that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, I've definitely worked with a lot of women who've just really struggled to become a parent, struggled with many miscarriages and just traumatic pregnancies. And it is something that we really need to speak up about, to the extent that you feel comfortable, because obviously it's deeply personal if you've experienced something like that. And even, the struggle with abortion, I think is a really important, question of being true to ourselves, being true to our way, and being able to make choices that feel best to us as women. And I really think that Reiki can help us find that center of strength and resilience in heartbreak and trauma, when we're going through something that is like the worst case scenario and we're living it. We need a spiritual resource we can reach to. to find that. And so if you struggle with any of the questions around being a parent, being the best parent that you can be, even becoming a parent, or the heartache around not having that, opportunity in life, of course, we're all Reiki geeks here, so we love Reiki, but we're going to say that Reiki is the medicine for all of that, but it is. So,
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much. And thanks, guys, for sharing your thoughts and your experiences today. And we look forward to hearing from you. Remember to like this, yes, and follow us. And we will see you at the next Reiki Women podcast. Bye for now.